Hey guys, it's Matt. Chapter 4 in less than 30 seconds. There's a little bit of confusion. People are asking where they can get the book. There's no book. I'm actually finishing up the chapters sometimes minutes before reading them. The book exists on a 20-year-old laptop and 2 thumb drives. There is nowhere to buy it. Will I eventually print it? Probably not. I'll PDF it to anybody that wants it, and then it's because it's small this time, unlike the other. There's a few sources where you could just go to Lulu or something like that, and if you want to have it printed, they'll ship it to you for, whatever it might cost, $18 or something like that. But I'm not going to profit from that in any way. I'm just going to give it away for free. Chapter 4. You're driving and you come to a red light. The bumper sticker on the Tesla in front of you says, "Science will win." The assholes of this world, especially liberals, are in love with science. Modern science and technology is heralded as the hero of this world, but we never get a cure. None of the things that cause stress and worry in your life ever go away. What is all this technological advancement for if people don't benefit? When the proletariat are given a technology that seems like a nice convenience, it's first and foremost to benefit them, like internet banking. Oh gee, I can now deposit a check by taking a picture of it with my phone. The ills of the world are solved. All tech has ever done is make a corporation richer in exchange for handing a person an inconsequential trinket that doesn't fundamentally improve their lives. Science and technology advances its own aims to produce a more complicated society that is better at hiding real people from their spiritual selves. Nothing painful in your life is ever remedied by tech. In fact, it can be shown that technology has made your life far worse. 90% of life's biggest problems could have gone away about 30 years ago if all this tech would have been used correctly to benefit people. The dark reality doesn't want anybody's hassles and worries to end, does it? Tech just adds 1,000 distractions a week that didn't exist in 1970. The endless usernames and passwords to remember is just one of many examples. Can you count the hours you've spent being logged out of websites or having to reset passwords? One company actually forced me to scan in a copy of my driver's license and a few electric bills to prove who I was because I'd lost my username and password, and they had an old email address on file, so I couldn't recover it that way. If Microsoft and Google was really working for people who they call their customers, this password mess would have gone away about 2005 or so. Now they have 2-step verification to piss us off even more. You can't do any banking today because you just realized that your cell phone that just got the security code text is in your car, and your girlfriend is driving your car to Las Vegas with a guy named Julio. Even tech that seems benign just aids our spiritual adversary. Take the Ring brand doorbell, for example. That's the little camera on your door that you can watch through your cell phone. My friend Greg said his father keeps looking at his phone when they go out to lunch. He keeps getting notifications of some kind that something is approaching his door. The bastards at Ring have succeeded in feeding Greg's father incredible paranoia. Almost every time Greg's father has looked into it, it's been a squirrel or a cat, or one time a week, it's an Amazon driver. Pam, my friend, lives in a townhouse community. She walked up to the neighbor's house the other day to borrow the garden hose to water her flowers. 30 seconds later, her neighbor called her. "What's up? Hey, what's up? You coming up to do I have a package?" They're friends, so her approaching the door wasn't a big deal. But reality had created just one more useless conversation and distraction. See how these distractions add up incrementally? How many hours a day do people scroll through Facebook? Email was considered a wonderful thing in about 1990 when it got popular in corporations. A few years later, about 100 million employees would never be able to leave work behind ever again. On vacation? I don't think so. No vacation for you. They check and they type emails even on Sunday around the pool, taking 90% of their attention away from their own children. The story we are given is that technology leads to wonderful advancement, but just the opposite is true. Tech is another step on the road to spiritual debasement. Tech is a shackle keeping people away from what's important in life. As it has evolved today, technology is a crafted nuisance passed off as a wonderful convenience. There are millions of examples of what I'm talking about. When that power surge came about 2 years ago for me, it exploded my entire electrical box in the house. so I got very little surge throughout the house. At first, it didn't seem like my neighbor got it as bad as I did. I took the brunt of it, being the first house next to the transformer that blew up. His switch box did not explode like mine did, but that meant the surge went throughout the wires of his house. So almost every damn thing in his house with a chip in it needed to be replaced. I saw him, he's dragging out washers, dryers, he's dragging out refrigerators, microwaves, alarm clocks, ceiling fans with complicated remote controls. What would have happened if the same surge hit his house, say, in 1985? Nothing. Nothing at all. The refrigerator, washer, dryer, and everything else would have just worked. As he stood out in his driveway, covered in sweat, $10,000 in the hole, which eventually would have been replaced by insurance, but initially $10,000 in the hole with everything on back order, he thanked tech. He looked up into the air and said, "Thanks, tech, for all your chips and smart devices. Fuck you." Matt, that's about the biggest and craziest conspiracy of all time. What are you, a lunatic? You're saying that in some way all of this is on purpose and smart devices are sinister somehow. Yes, of course that's what I'm saying. It's the biggest conspiracy of all time, without anyone involved in the design or the manufacture of the smart device doing anything other than trying to help society. We are dealing with true evil genius here at the top of the org chart. Not everybody can see it. If you back up far enough and look at what's happening as a whole, you can see it. The evil genius of how the dark reality works is always the same. Its first play in the playbook is distraction, and it's a master at collecting up tiny, incremental wins for itself. Have you ever been asked in your life to allow cookies on a website or read a privacy statement? Oh yeah, I know, about 14 million times. Then what happens when you actually get to the website? Just as you're beginning to read some text on the website that you're trying to find, a box pops up and gets in your face. It asks you to subscribe. Subscribe to me. Subscribe to me. Go away. I just want to read. Subscribe to me. Then some ad off to the right appears as a GIF, flashing as you try to read your text. You still can't concentrate on what you're there to do. It took our brains about 5 years to completely ignore that bullshit. Here's another one. Has a company ever sent you a notice about privacy? Yeah, like hundreds of times. It's even come as a separate letter in the mail from some vendor, from your electric company to your dildo manufacturer. We value your privacy. We value your privacy. Here's a change to our privacy policy. Aren't you so interested in this? Privacy, privacy, privacy. Do you know how many people have ever read the statements to understand the privacy policy updates? No one has. No one in the history of the world has ever read it. So you must ask yourself, what are the 14 billion privacy notices over a 20-year period for, then? A big theme of this book is pointing out a world of opposites. The more privacy notices you get, the more letters and statements saying, we value your privacy, you know what that means overall? The less privacy you actually have in life. That's its ultimate message, not the bullshit written on the letter itself. How many people and companies sending out privacy notices understand what is actually being served in that distracting notice? None of them do. None of them are in on it, but yet they all serve it. This is real lunatic shit, Matt. Now privacy notices coming from corporations are really some gigantic conspiracy. In the weeds level, it doesn't make any sense, I'll give you that. You need to go back to 100,000 feet and look at the whole of what this reality does in terms of incremental distraction tactics. At that level, yes, it is a conspiracy. Call me a loon if you want. Just don't inform my relatives on the procedural steps it would take to commit me. You know the small box ads that pop up at the bottom of a YouTube video while you're trying to watch the video, right? They were more common a few years ago. Now, 1 minute into every video, it takes you to like double ad. You can't skip it. So in the past, it was more subtle with these little boxes popping up. Okay, you had to click the little X at the top of the box to remove it while you were watching the video. Now, I believe it's possible that not one product was ever sold from those little pop-up ads. I'm not joking. Not one product ever sold. 10 trillion little boxes over 20 years and potentially not one sale. Think about it. You ever been watching a video, a little box pops up? Oh, that's of interest to me. Cat food, let me do that. No, you just want to continue with your video. Now, look, maybe they sold 5 products or 5 yo-yos, but almost nobody responded to those things. How many videos were billions and billions were distracted by these little boxes over 20 years, perhaps? And if you're screaming at me that the video itself is likely a distraction, I hear you. But they're not satisfied with one level of distraction. They build a series of Russian nesting dolls. The ad itself, if you click on the ad, there'll be another distraction. You think it's satisfied with one level? Is that the evil genius we're dealing with here? And I agree. Any one example, if I'm just telling you about little boxes at the bottom of YouTube ads, that seems ridiculous, even to you maybe. Any one example, I agree, is lunacy. If you back up and look at the trillions of distractions that this culture and society has crafted, with one little box popping up, being one little tiny thing on its own that's insignificant, not noticed, but that's how it does business. That's its evil genius. So continuing to read, somebody would say to me, "That's not conspiracy, Matt, you freak. It's just capitalism. These tiny ads are no big deal." And I would say back to them, no. It's not just the 5 seconds it costs you for the little ads in what we're discussing now. Add up the total time that is taken up, say, accepting cookies across an entire population of billions of people each day. Then calculate the total time it takes up in each week, the cookies, just the cookies, each year, each decade, each century, and that's just for accepting cookies. It quickly becomes like trillions of collective minutes. If you go out far enough, do you see how a petty distraction can cumulatively become significant? That's how the dark reality thinks, if it thinks at all. Again, the genius of it is almost nobody is in on it. The people who created the websites or even the privacy policies and laws, they're not consciously trying to distract real people from a spiritual journey, although they're certainly doing exactly what it wants in designing the websites that way. Everyone creating a new technology is trying the best they can to help society. This is the evil genius of it. The people themselves doing it have no evil intent, but nevertheless, they serve exactly what I call now, we'll rename it later, the dark reality wants. This system is evil genius in this regard and never should be underestimated. 99 point whatever percent of the minions that serve it have no idea what's happening. They could take a lie detector and pass that there are no way assisting anything dark, and anybody that would say anything like I'm saying now should literally be locked away. If we pause and back up, no matter what of what was just presented you agree or disagree with, I think you'll agree with the big picture. Always need to return to this level. It's simple. If you're busy all the time, you can't learn about your incorporeal self and what that part needs from you in life. If you're busy all the time, you don't have 1 second to think about anything meaningful and refine what you're supposed to do in life to satisfy the whole of you. Again, the adversary that plots against what real people are supposed to do in life hangs in the metaphysical shadows of this place. There's no bad guy who will pop out of a bush. There's nothing to point at in a police lineup. The engineers and scientists, like regular people responsible for technological advancements, certainly believe they're doing the best they can. They're not aware of the big picture. In this way, everyone is in on it, and no one is in on it at the same time. This reality is inverse, ass backwards, and upside down. Almost everything is the opposite of what people think it is, or what people in the masses believe is going on. For example, those who are put forth as our leaders, like Boris Johnson, for example, are actually the biggest losers who have ever existed. In terms of their competence to manage society, they aren't even fit to run a rubber dog do factory in Guangzhou. The leaders you see on TV don't decide anything important. The people that appear to be at the top, like the three Ps, presidents, premiers, and prime ministers, they do what they're told by the real powers on earth, figures that will never appear on no TV. Those people at the level of control just under the three Ps are so lost, they actually believe they're trying to help out. Your average congressperson, even senator for the most part, with few exceptions, people that do know what's going on, but most would think I'm nuts for suggesting anything sinister is at play here. They're not in on it, these people at these levels. They're not going off to Starbucks for secret meetings with Skeletor. That's what the first-grade truther believes. We think about this stuff, but why hasn't our cousins or our Aunt Ginny ever wondered why for so many decades all the world leaders are unlikable degenerates? If a few cringeworthy politicians popped up every decade, just a few, that'd be just kind of a coincidence. How'd this guy get in here? Or this slimeball girl get in here? But when every world leader, decade after decade, is an unlikable, loathsome creature, then only a fool doesn't see the pattern here. It's all by design. It's on purpose, coming in some way from reality itself through its implementation arms. Incredibly, in 2023, we have another politician rising in power with the name Wiener. And Wiener. And again, the name plays a role in the script of his character. Oh my God, make it stop. Yes, these politicians are actually meant to be hated by most people. Our adversary gets something out of playing the same political script and game over and over. This one may have to do with free will and one's self-corruption. That is needed here, self-corruption. They make the political game more and more ridiculous, which in some way gives them a greater ability to screw people who consent to the madness and can't see through it as we can. This is why the approval rating for Congress is always somewhere between vomit and a death row inmate. Nothing here works the way people think it does. Presidents seem more powerful than corporate CEOs. That means the opposite is true. Almost everything in this earth reality is backwards. Obama was given the Nobel Peace Prize in the first year of his presidency. But by most metrics, Obama went on to become the United States' biggest war president. The rule of opposites continues with Obama because although statistically he was a warmonger, per this rule, he was physically the wimpiest. Wimpy burgers. Now picture Obama on his Pee Wee Herman bike with his handlebar horn and pink streamers in his spokes. There are thousands of these examples that demonstrate that reality presents itself as a refraction or inversion of what is morally right, just, and true. The yin-yang is the most famous symbol of all time for a reason. As one side moves up, the other must move down in the same exact proportion and degree. This reality must work this way too. It's about duality and balance. It's the metaphysics of this place and the way it was designed. If something is taken on one side, it must be given back on the other side. This, in my opinion, is why we are discovering so much at this particular time. This is why we are benefiting. This yin-yang principle is between us and them. It's not karma I'm talking about, creating a wait at death. We'll talk about that later. That's not this. Also, it does not seem to be the principle of what goes around comes around either. That is a falsified belief based on the air of wishing and hoping. No, Matt. The creeps will certainly get what's coming to them. The Rockefellers, Obama, the Clintons, Henry Kissinger. What goes around comes around, Matt. No, it doesn't. For them, no, they won't. They've played this role of power for a very long time. If some lower-level minion, like Anthony Weiner, goes down or is disgraced, that's the script that particular low-level minion is playing at that time. If Julius Caesar was really stabbed, that's simply that act of the play. I'd like nothing more than if what goes around comes around. But I'm sorry, that's not how this reality works. But the yin-yang applies. Let them do what they do because it has to come back and benefit us, benefiting yourself and your spiritual journey. First time I'll introduce it in the book. Worry about yourself. It comes up a little bit later, but I keep it to a minimum. All that matters is your journey. If they're going to give you what you need, take it. Let me ask you, if certain minions are dragged off to jail, how does that benefit you? Tell me about that. Or you just feel good inside because Hillary Clinton got 14 consecutive life sentences? How does that benefit your spiritual journey? It doesn't. That's why what goes around comes around is bullshit. Who cares? If they're continuing to, per the yin-yang, to be assholes, but then I'm benefiting in terms of what I can see and understand about reality and myself, then let them keep doing it. I don't benefit if they're dragged off to jail. How does that help me? First-grade truthers hate this. They hate it when I talk about these creeps as role players, necessary role players, but that's what they are. The yin-yang principle is not the same as our rule of opposites, which can be directly applied to the creeps. For example, those who are the richest and most famous, like Jeff Bezos, per the rule, are spiritually destitute. Those said to be the biggest philanthropists, like the Gates Foundation, don't truly help those in need. Big Pharma is never out to cure anyone. School is never attempting to foster intelligent thought. Banks lend money they don't have. Tech makes your life more complicated. Additional funding never cures a disease. Televangelists on TV, serving God supposedly, turn out to be the biggest criminals. When you think about the creeps or the outer society and culture, we'll eventually get to the outer ring of reality when we get to that discussion. The rule of opposites is almost never broken. I don't know if it can be broken. It's just the way this place was designed. And it was designed so we would notice. The rule of opposites, they're breadcrumbs for us. All this means is what authority, government, say the news wants for you is almost never what you should want for yourself. If you're ever confused, just see what it asks of you. Asks what it wants you to do and then run in the other direction. Don't take it too far, though. Your local city council or some billboards down on Main Street may put out a poster somewhere asking a kid to eat your vegetables. That doesn't mean you should switch your kid over to a diet of chips and chocolate bars, carrying out the rule of opposites, or going too far with it. But on the other hand, the government has also made posters about the benefits of fluoride in the water. So do what you think's right. As the news moves from local news to national up to international, the lie just gets bigger as the inversion occurs. So applying our rule of opposites, if 60 Minutes runs a story about Kim Jong-un as a really scary nuclear threat, then you should assume your local Baskin-Robbins ice cream store is more threatening. Un is a puppet of Un. Un is a puppet of the UN. He's a puppet of the one world system. He does what he's told. He's allowed to decide what Johnny Sacco in the Flying Robot episode he wants to watch this evening, but that's about it. He has no weapons program other than the one that appears in the script on the news. If you could open up one of his nuclear missiles and look into some of the vessels being shown off at the Pyongyang parade, you'd find a family of raccoons nesting inside an empty cylinder. If he invades South Korea someday, I was not wrong in what I just presented. If he invades Seoul, it will simply be a single act of a larger play, as it was written for him a long time ago. North Korea likely will invade Seoul someday, because the name of the city is too perfect for it not to be included in some creepy grand work of fiction that they're going to try to pull off. He will invade, think of it, he'll invade Seoul. S-O-U-L. Come on, sir. How ridiculous will that act of the script be? If you back up far enough, country names, country borders, flags, all part of the same one. A small group sits at the creepy table, but they're not the spiritual adversary that I've been referring to at the top of the org chart. Organizations like the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the World Economic Forum, Tavistock, etc., 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 are implementation arms of the thing at the top of the creepy org chart. This small controlling group of implementers has been around, in my opinion, for a very long time. They serve the dark reality, and most, in my opinion, most aren't even aware of what it is. But never try to seek these minions out to, we're going to fight back. That is exactly what the dark reality wants. That's what it baits so many groups into. Even protest it feeds from. In Star Wars, it's the Emperor screaming at Luke to pick up the lightsaber. Strike me down. Pick up the lightsaber. And he does, but then he corrects his mistake. That's the sweet sort of energy from its perspective that it feeds itself with. In fact, don't even hate the dark side. That it will feed from that. This reality was designed with these role players, with these creepy organizations. So those of us who can see through all of it and overcome it or transmute it are benefiting from it. Every good story needs a bad guy. This reality, for you to learn something, needs to have assholes here, playing the parts of kings, presidents, premiers, prime ministers, that's the 3 Ps, governors, Hollywood actors, and Joel Ovaltine. Hillary Clinton, get thee to a nunnery. The assholes here are role players who serve the corrupting influence, with most of them not even seeing the big picture. These minions like Melvin P. are not the same spiritual entity or incarnation that you are. It has likely always been this way. What a fascinating game it is. The designated role of creeps was cast a long time ago, but they have marionette strings that go down on both sides of all conflict, both sides of war. After the 7-Eleven job application and the man in a cave story, they were actually able to wage war in Afghanistan and Iraq for 20 years. Somehow, my friend Tony or your cousins, it made perfect sense why the U.S. was in these countries for an additional 19 years after 2001. The initial Taliban war was supposedly, quote, won in 6 months. There are actually stories of special forces riding horses while coordinating their efforts with what was called the Northern Alliance and the Kurds at the time. Why was heroin production the lowest in Afghan history in 2001 on the day of the big event, and the highest in their history 10 years after the U.S. occupation? Is lighting plants on fire harder than I thought it was? Your friends and family don't require explanations anymore that line up with common sense. This is one of our biggest frustrations in life. The news can say almost anything at this point, and it will be believed by our retarded aunts and uncles. Absurd mantras are repeated decade after decade, like, quote, "Our troops are over there in order to keep us safe and protect our freedoms here." That is absurd as saying this: "Honey, what the heck are you doing?" "Honey, I'm over here cleaning the neighbor's house so we can live clean at home." Movies sometimes leak the truth. Matt Damon, running around Iraq in the movie Green Zone, told us there were never any weapons of mass destruction being hidden by Saddam, pronounced that way by George H.W. Bush on purpose. Saddam. Interesting. Thanks, Colin Powell. Thank you, son. Thanks, Colin Powell, for your performance at the UN. You should have received a Saturn Award. No, thank you, son. I don't want this book to get dark. I promise myself that this will not turn into another conspiracy book, where the last book was over 700 pages documenting the endless fraud. And that was only about 5% of everything. So let's pause. Let me give you some great news right now. Here is the most important part of the inverse reality rule. If you're reading this or listening, and according to their standards and metrics, you're a complete loser in life, then you're actually a massive winner where it matters most. Say you've had a bad month and you're now living out the first 10 minutes of the movie Stripes with Bill Murray, but Bill Murray's life in the first 10 minutes actually looks good to you. You just lost your job and your girlfriend has disowned you because you're a blank event denier, written here in the book, then per the rules here and the inverse reality rule, it means you're likely a massive winner of grand proportions where it matters most. All you do is take its standards and metrics of success and judge yourself using the inverse. If it says you're doing really well here, then you're actually screwed. That's screwed. Some guy's like, "I just got the key to the city. But listen to what Matt said. Oh, no, should we give it back?" If you just got the key to the city, you're screwed. Strong spiritual beings, quote, ready to graduate, can never get to the top of this system and don't even want to get to the top of this system. One note, I'm sorry for those that are triggered by ready to graduate. This is hard to talk about. We don't have the exact terms. Generally, do you know what I mean? You do, so don't get triggered by the term. The more real people reject this reality's standards of success, the more the Matrix will wage war on those people like white blood cells on a splinter. This rule of the inverse is rarely broken. If society says you're a loser, then that means spiritually you're a winner. Yes, you are Marty McFly at the end of Back to the Future, and Bill Gates of the Melinda and Melvin P. Foundation is Biff, waxing your black truck. Trust me, even if Bill's net worth crossed $200 billion, you'd never want to trade places with that sort of creepy entity. Melvin P. is not the same as you are. He's a lower entity. He's Fiddlin' Ben's low. It's impossible to rise to the top of this material world, like owning the leading ambulance-chasing law firm in Chicago, and also have a grasp of the spiritual truths that we're discussing here. If you think this is some sort of rationalization so losers like me can feel important, then you're either a minion or an NPC who won't understand this book anyway. Those who believe they're running the world like Melvin P. and Santa Claus Schwab are spiritually destitute compared to those listening. It's likely that the people of wealth and celebrity are not the same type of entity or incarnation that you are. You're much greater than they are in the areas that matter. They are a big fish here in this tiny pond. That isn't special. That's shit. Apply the rule of opposites to them. Here they're big fish. Here, big fish, here, important. How important do you think they are where it matters, though? How special is it to be considered royalty when one's throne is nothing more than a toilet seat? Creeps like Melvin P. may actually even be bound to this place in some way. You are not bound to this earth place at death. They may be. We don't know. I guarantee your possibilities are greater. Your vacation choices are greater. Okay? You are able to improve the part that is here to benefit the part of you that is not here. That makes you a greater being than minions like Melvin. The proof is easily demonstrated. I'm just sitting here slathering myself in my own feces, making this shit up. You can look around and see it. Think about this. Not one of them ever gets out of line, do they? Doesn't free will define what a powerful being really is? They all march together in perfect unison. And again, this is reality giving itself away. You will never, ever see someone like Melvin conduct an interview and say, I'm done doing this stuff. I'm not doing this crap anymore. I'm done talking about vaxes and hosting events that talk about health. I'm just done with it. I'm really going to give my money away this time, and I'm ashamed for many of the things that I've done in my past. Let's sit down and talk about it. Bring the press in here. Deep down, we know we'll never hear that sort of thing, not just from Melvin, from Mark Zuckerberg, from any of them that we consider minions. It just gives their whole situation away. Not only does none of them ever turn over a new leaf, but per the principle of stalled century, we'll talk about that more later, they seemingly can never get out of the roles that they're playing now. Nancy Pelosi is still in Congress. Warren Buffett and George Soros are still working. These scripts of these entities never change. They give themselves away. We need not catch them hanging upside down in a cave from stalactites to realize they're a different entity than we are. A few years ago, they tried to fake a man turning over a new leaf story with Jim Carrey. That ghoul popped up and saying, he's saying some interesting things. No, within 5 minutes, it was a joke. We saw right through it. Don't care what he was saying. He's the same wacko that played Fire Marshal Bill. It was a false presentation. We could tell in a second, real people, if it's genuine or not. In using these billionaires like Amazon's Dr. Evil, water heater pilot, as a model of who real people should not want to be like, I'm not just talking about their money. I don't think we have to be perfect in this life. If you have a bit of money, you're not doomed. There's no need to put all your possessions out on the stoop tonight so they can be stolen by the same people who stole Akeem and Simi's luggage. You don't have to go off and live in a cardboard box in order to win, in my opinion. If you have a pretty good corporate job because you got to put your kids through school and the educations are now $60,000 a year and you just inherited your father's $900,000 farm because he passed away, I don't think you have to go running off to the hills to live like Little House on the Prairie to be spiritually successful, at least not right away. There's no need to yell out, "Good night, John boy," in the dark as you blow out the last candle in order to win, as long as you slowly separate and cut ties from it. Every day offers an opportunity to do this. It's an opportunity as it wants to get closer to it, to get more attachments, to get sucked into it, to covet what it wants, or to get away from it, to take a step in the other direction. So in my opinion, with a massive bank account and massive social status and keys to the city, I don't think it's possible to cut ties and to do the spiritual work we need to do in that situation. In the past, I've called these types of attachments Jacob Marley chains, and we've crafted each link onto ourselves during the many decades that we fell for the trick. At one time, we all sought its rewards. We learned to desire what it wanted for us and from us. When we served it the energy it wanted, we crafted transcendental chains and attachments to it that I call Jacob Marley chains. Going away from the book for a second, for anybody that disagreed with that about the concept of the Jacob Marley chains, and I'm open to changing that, but look at how much it tries to make contract with us. What do you think it's doing all this for? For no reason? Just no reason at all? We don't kind of craft in some way, I don't have any other way to describe it, these Jacob Marley chains or transcendental links. Whether you click "I agree" to get on a website, or click "I'm not a robot," or the fine print over here, or your straw man, all name caps, or someday your digital twin, it works all day long to enter some sort of weird contract with you to get your agreement. What is all this for if there's no merit to what I just said? Okay, I'm open to changing it a bit as we go forward. But you tell me what it's trying to make contract with us 1,000 times a day. What's all that for? Just for no reason? Now, the good news is, even if this is true, and we all still have a few chains, for example, compared to Aunt Ginny. Even if it's true, we have the power to break them if we can see them. It's all up to us. We must separate and detach our caboose from this crazy train. Hey, it may take a few years. It's employing a series of small steps and recognizing opportunities to cut ties with this system, society and culture, everything it offers, or have I just fallen for it again? Did I just get closer to it? Might take a little while, but the greatest news of all time is we have the power to do it ourselves. You need not solicit the aid of some guru, or this is a spell mat that will do it, or a ritual, or a grimoire. Don't need any of it. You don't have to go off and learn about sigil magic or pay for psychics on Coney Island. It simply takes, if you're a real person, if you're an NPC listening to this or a minion, you might not have these powers. I can't speak for you. It just takes a pronouncement or affirmation with visualization and clear intention to dissolve the power of its trick. First comes the realization that we have the power to do it ourselves. If anybody say, oh, delusions of grandeur, Matt, you're talking like everybody has this power. It's just wishful thinking. Really, you can be it's proven. It's simple to see. Just look around. Like we've talked about in the past. Why does one play a trick? Because it has to play a trick that shows that we are in the powerful position. One plays a trick to get the one trick to do something that it can't do for itself. It needs to lay down the trick. If it was powerful, it wouldn't need the trick. This is first grade shit. Okay, we have the power to do it ourselves. Okay, I saw myself cozying up to it. I'm not going to do it. I just cut another tie. Fine. Lastly, it takes action and intention after the affirmation, the pronouncement. You have to actually walk the walk. Okay, the second part of the process is more difficult. Affirmations are not complicated. I see your pathetic trick, and it doesn't work on me. To me, that sort of affirmation is good enough. But if it's something where we actually have to follow through, it's not just about the affirmation. I affirm that I will separate myself spiritually from your whorehouses. Then if you run around with the whorehouses all week long, then the affirmation then is worthless. Like I've mentioned before, I can be slightly paranoid in this regard, but I'll always err on the side of doing the affirmations and not underestimating the spiritual adversary here, the asshole dark. I always will go too far. Maybe I'm a little paranoid, fine. The no consequences people say none of this is necessary. I'll err on this side. You do what you want. For example, one of the most annoying and irritating things of all time is when a website will be like, prove you're not a robot. Oh, not this shit again. Greg and I laugh about it. The 9 boxes pop up. Click all boxes with a bike. Well, there's a motorcycle in one. Is that a bike? And then Greg's like, well, there's one where there's you can see handlebars sticking out from behind a bush, but that's all. Is that a bike? They're not easy. They're really not. Remember the distraction we talked about 20 minutes? It's all tied together. But in this case, somebody might come along and say, Matt, look, this is really about protecting privacy. These vendors, they don't want somebody accessing your account. Fine, I'm probably overly paranoid in this regard. But when I have seen this many times, click here, like CAPTCHA, click, I'm not a robot. I've said it out loud. I said, I'm going to click this, but if there's any fine print here by me clicking I'm not a robot someday makes me eligible to become a robot, I remove all power from it. Okay, it's a little paranoid, but once I've done it, then the affirmation, I say this affirmation sticks. I don't then do it every single time, although I have the tendency to want to do it every single time. Matt, why am I listening to this book? You're a madman. Okay, I'm a little eccentric in certain ways. I will always use these affirmations maybe more than they need to. Matt, a general affirmation from a spiritual being overrides it all. You're probably right. I'm just using this as kind of a funny example. A no consequences person screaming at me and say, Matt, a truly powerful being doesn't even have to do an affirmation because they believe in every cell, right down to whatever you call DNA, that they cannot be harmed in any way. That's probably good enough. But if anybody's not sure, a general affirmation, I will never, by clicking, I want this box over here to get the new cable service or whatever, get the Hulu Plus, I got to click this and click that. I'll never give a part of myself away under any circumstance, and it all is null and void. You know what? From a powerful being, the general affirmation is probably good enough. How far can you or we extend this sort of thing? Remember the light trick. That's the ultimate discussion for the truther. Well, go into the light or not. We've been talking about that horse shit. Could be as simple as, well, Matt, we're in charge of everything, right? That doesn't, whatever the trick could potentially be, it doesn't work on us. Why? Because I said so. I mean, it's probably literally that simple. If it wasn't, reality as a whole, in millions of different permutations, would not be playing a massive trick with a billion moving parts. The first 15 minutes of A Christmas Carol could be a massive truth drop regarding Jacob Marley Chains and some of the things we talked about a few minutes ago. If you're going to watch it as a movie, watch the George C. Scott version if you can. Never watch the more recent FX version, which is a disgusting bastardization, and it's just repulsive for a lot of reasons. Okay, in the movie or in the book, Jacob carries, as he says, the chains he forged in life. He can see that Scrooge carries an even longer chain that won't be visible to him until death. Now, don't take this literally. We'll talk about things like the BS of karma later. I don't consider Jacob Marley Chains to be karma. That's bullshit karma. We'll talk about it later. I don't consider money a spiritual weight in and of itself if it's used in the right way. Okay, and if anybody's screaming at me now, I can hear you saying, Matt, this Jacob Marley Chains or Scrooge, if he's a real spiritual being, then potentially has the power to just remove them all per affirmation. Yes, I believe that, as long as he then becomes the new Scrooge the next day and then walks the walk. Again, can't have the affirmation of saying, I separate from your whorehouses. Then every day for the rest of your life, you're in the whorehouses. If you see what I mean. They have to be consistent. Regarding what I just said about money and not being a spiritual weight in and of itself, depending on how it's used, relates right back to the Belinda and Melvin P. Foundation, these giant charities, which are not charities. They call themselves philanthropy. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They never use the money. They can't metaphysically use the money to help anybody in need. We'll talk about it more soon. But if I woke up to find $20 million in my mailbox, it would be a joy, considering all the incredible ways I would use it to benefit others. Right now, somebody's leaning in to comment, and they're going to twist my words. Matt, a few months ago, you said if somebody knocked on your door and offered $1 billion, you wouldn't even take it. And now you're saying you take the $20 million. Don't twist my words. There's a proviso, of course. If somebody knocked on my door and offered me $1 billion and I could use the money to benefit all of society, to open cat shelters and do great things, of course I would take the money. Don't misinterpret what I said. Whatever would be knocking on the door offering me the $1 billion for no reason, or to take before it was positioned as, would you give up Bootsy the cat who was pissing all over my house? I wouldn't even give up the cat pissing up on my house for $1 billion. But if it could help open 1,000 cat shelters, of course I would. The proviso was I couldn't really do any good with it, except I could buy speedboats. I could buy houses next to Boris Becker in Madrid. I could hang out with Rob Lowe on the nude beach. I could run around the world, spend a bunch of money on nonsense, own a bunch of homes in the French Riviera. Nonsense. I'm not interested in that. I wouldn't take it. Of course I wouldn't take it. I would take any amount that I could use to help people, of course. This system would never allow me to use $1 billion the way I would want to use it, or anyone else. However, if I spent the money on speedboats and hookers, well, the Matrix would be just fine with that. If I did that, it would leave me and my whores alone. As we can see by now, the billionaires talk a lot about philanthropy, but they do nothing with their money that truly benefits anybody in need. In this regard, there's probably a hidden definition of philanthropy that only exists in a dark dictionary, because when you and I do it, it's not called philanthropy, it's called charity. What if I throw an extra quarter in the Salvation Army bucket? Have I given enough then to call it philanthropy? The word seems to correspond with amounts, but it probably really means something else other than charity, like no one can actually be helped, maybe. Look around your hometown. No one reading this will ever be able to tell me how charities of these billionaires have helped anybody they know in their town. That's not a coincidence. It's because their, quote, charities are not helping those in need. These charities are mostly BS who pass money back and forth between themselves and other concerns who don't need any money, like the Harvard Endowment. Per the metaphysical rules here, the charities of these billionaires cannot help anyone in need beyond the absolute minimum that is required to support the facade that they're real charities. Let me say that again. If Bill Gates woke up one day and actually wanted to use $50 billion of his money, assuming any of it's his money anyway, to genuinely help people, he would not be able to use his money to help anyone, in my opinion. It seems to be a rule here, as immutable as if you drop a brick, it will fall. I call this axiom Fig Newton's first law of creepy money. If the billions are considered creepy money, then nothing good can be done with it. If Mark wants to build another metaverse, of course, that's just fine then. Go ahead, Mark, take whatever billions you need and build the next metaverse. They love that shit. Every time a hurricane takes out about 1,000 homes on Puerto Rico, I look for Bill and Bezos to see how they're helping out down there. Here's what I see them doing. Bill sends Windows 11 in boxes on thumb drives. The other, the water heater pilot, offers 10% off Amazon products and services. But you see, Melvin and Bezos, these people ain't got no electricity for a year. Sure, you may know about the Melvin P. shelter in Seattle, and you may have even seen people eating hot dogs there for free one day as you drove by. So what? That's the token minimum that I'm talking about, to make the charity appear legitimate. Maybe the hot dogs expired at the grocery store and were being thrown out anyway, and that's how Melvin procured them, the cheap bastard. I'm sure you can Google the Belinda and Melvin P. Gates Foundation and see all the wonderful things it has done. I don't care what is listed on some website. It's a pittance of what it could be doing to help people with its power and influence and money. Again, most philanthropy seems to flow to legal entities that need no money in the first place. This is like giving Cleo McDowell McDonald's gift certificates. When Bill says he helps the poor in Africa, who knows what that really means? Who's there to witness it beyond his own publicist? Maybe they once threw a can of Spam out a helicopter. Maybe they threw a can of Spam out a helicopter window and then flew away to hunt lion heads. A hyena ran away with the can. That is logged then into the general ledger of the foundation under the heading Assistance to Africa with Bono's approval. Then they take a tax deduction on the Spam, even though the dingo dogs got it away from the hyena. The owner of the Philadelphia Eagles NFL team, Jeffrey Lurie, is also a charitable reject. That means he's a philanthropist. Every time I've looked into it, he's done almost nothing for the city. He probably has a small park and a swing set in West Philly somewhere named after him. So what? He probably asked the city to split the cost of the teeter-totter with him. He won't allow kids to bring their slip-and-slides into the park because he fears being named in a lawsuit. What these billionaires do is like me flipping a homeless man a penny and then asking for change. One thing is apparent. As a collective population on Earth, we, in total, are losing to this thing. Of course, I think you and I are an exception. In the past, the differences between the generations was subtle. Today, it's extreme. I'm not only talking about intelligence or spiritual debasement. Greg talks about a time he spent with his grandfather when he was alive and how he could do anything. He could weld plumbing, rebuild a car engine, wire a home, shingle a roof. Greg's grandfather in the 50s, say, may have been slightly better than most, but it was not uncommon for that generation to have these sorts of skills, especially outside the big cities. The last two generations can barely tie their shoes and will scream at you if you interrupt them watching Twitch. Being able to work the land and build things is also part of the human experience. Of course, that has been removed from people as well. A hammer has been replaced with a force feedback joystick. Building a barn is one thing, but our perception and psychic abilities have been intentionally dubbed down over the years as well. They have a variety of techniques that act as a governor on both our mind and senses. However, a few of us here are bucking the trend and are off the ship of fools. It's good we're doing it now. Maybe this time in history is our last chance to do this sort of work. Once Ray Kurzweil and Elon Musk puts a chip in people's brain, spiritually winning may be a bit more difficult, if you see what I mean. Per the rule of yin and yang, as the creeps make big moves to influence society, it seems like a metaphysical law that we are then able to see more. Then this teaches us about ourselves. Why can't your friends see it then, if it's a rule? At the minimum, one needs to desire to see it. It can never just happen. Remember, we're not playing or competing against any foe. We are playing and competing essentially against ourselves in this game. Winning is entirely up to us. Most people desperately want to remain asleep, meaning most people don't want to win, and call us crazy for even suggesting that that sort of game is at play here. Regarding your cousins or my friend Tony, the decision to wake up or not is entirely theirs. It matters not what you can show them or present to them. Recently, it seems, the schemes of the creeps have been so massive and so egregious that it's become easier for real people like us to see through everything. I certainly consider myself to be a smart reality researcher, but these assholes are taking such big bites of their shit sandwich that their actions just hand me the answers. Who knows why so much was given away to us over the past 15 years? In some ways, it seems like they are behind schedule. Per the yin and the yang, the bigger the bite they need to take, the more information must be revealed to the few of us who care to notice. Either way, we are benefiting. Our friends and family, like always, are more concerned with staying safe. There are other possibilities, and each one delivers us more good news if they turn out to be true. It's possible we're getting great insight at this moment in time because the reality itself is designed to be a wake-up mechanism, at least for real people. We know now that this reality can be different things to different people. Even its facts are somewhat fluid. Again, I often wonder why the creeps are doing so many big things which exposes so much to us about how reality works. However, I must remind myself that these creeps are likely playing a role in the one that was designed for them, which ultimately we will benefit from. It's likely not up to them in terms of what is given away, if you see what I mean. Their schemes seem designed for an entire population, and if a tiny group of us wakes up as a side effect to their big bites, so be it. At the same time, their actions may be intended to wake us up because that is what their role is to us. Different roles to different groups, potentially. That may be different for us than it is to, say, my friend Tony. Again, the creeps may not even understand this stuff. A fish in a fish tank doesn't fully comprehend its circumstances. Maybe the lower-level creeps like Melvin don't either. The fish doesn't understand it's a tank and it's inside a dentist's office and the Pacific Ocean is a mile down the road. It couldn't comprehend any of that. We likely have overestimated how much they know about, say, the screen level or what is really at the top of their own creepy org chart. The man who willingly puts small snakes on his arm to bite in order to slowly develop venom resistance has a long-term goal. The snake doing the biting, Melvin, has no conception of the big picture of what the man being bitten is trying to accomplish. This sort of thing will continue to be debated and argued amongst us, but there is no point in the debate. The first-grade truther will always think that they're all in the know, and even your local Masonic lodge is down there plotting and planning against us right now. It matters not who knows what if you back up far enough and see the personal journey and the way about yourself. What we have to do for ourselves right now is the same as long as we see the general tactics of our spiritual adversary. Thanks for listening.